The bank has closed our account and they seized all the money that was in the account.
We actually served a search warrant on their condo in Brentwood, and at first they didn't open the door.
Police search warrant, open up! Police, open up!
Well, hi there, I'm Tom Natchu. Welcome to this edition of Fraud Squad. Now, who thinks twice about carefully using their credit card, especially when losses due to fraud are generally insured by the credit card company itself? Well, if it's happened to you, you know that it can be quite an ordeal just to get through the reversing of the transaction, and you might not even notice the theft if you're not checking your card statements diligently. Well, that's what fraudsters are actually counting on, and they're stealing over $1 billion of our money every year. In this episode, we're going to show you how criminals use everyday places like gas stations and restaurants to steal your credit card information and then go on a spending spree at your expense.
Police search warrant, open up! Police, open up!
I never suspected that the restaurant did it.
Two individuals decided to start an identity theft ring. And what they did was they decided to use waiters at places that you and I go to. And they preyed on people that are just eating dinner.
I had stopped at the grocery store on my way home from work, and I attempted to use my card to pay for the groceries, and the card didn't go through. I had had lunch at a restaurant. When they took my card to pay for the dinner, they went and scanned it twice.
And once they had the PIN that opened the victim account, they were able to then take all the money out of it.
What we have here is evidence that was recovered from the execution of the search warrant on the home of the main suspects. This is an example of a skimmer that was given to one of the servers, and the server would place this in their apron. And once the customer at the restaurant would give the ATM debit card as a form of payment to the server would go to the back of the restaurant, would take the ATM debit card, and would just place it in, wait for the beep, and they would pull it out, and their information was then captured onto the skimmer.
Pretty upscale restaurant, so I just didn't think anything like that would happen.
They had software which they would take their own ATM debit card and put the victim's information on the back. They would then go into the bank with their own ATM debit cards and ask for a PIN change.
They did go to the bank, deposited a check, and then withdrew money from the check.
They were making counterfeit checks, and they would write the victim's name on the check.
They then recruited very attractive women to go into the banks to inflate the balances with these counterfeit checks. And then they themselves or these runners would use the ATM debit cards that they created to withdraw all the money.
I looked at my account, and about $8,000 it was overrun.
Taking elaborate trips, they're living very high and owning lots of property and lots of nice clothes and cars. They actually lived in Santa Monica in a beautiful beachfront condominium where they lived off of everybody else's money for about a year.
We actually served a search warrant on their condo in Brentwood, and at first they didn't open the door.
What do we got?
One room, 12 guys, split down the middle, no other entrance.
We did end up having to bust the door down, and they were shocked.
Police search warrant, open up! Police, open up!
How many people do not shield their PIN when using an ATM or debit card terminal? 6%, 28%, 60%, or 92%? Astonishingly, 60% of us don't hide our PIN when we're at the bank machine. Remember, you need to do exactly the same thing when you're paying with your debit card. Always hide your PIN.
I never suspected that the restaurant did it.
2 individuals decided to start an identity theft ring.
They were making counterfeit checks, and they would write the victim's name on the check.
Where they lived off of everybody else's money for about a year.
We actually served a search warrant on their condo in Brentwood, and at first they didn't open the door.
Police search warrant, open up! Police, open up!
The 2 ringleaders, Matuzovic and Messagrou, were from France. They came here and decided to prey on American victims and live the American dream through crime. We were able to bring money laundering charges that were brought by the IRS. We were able to bring mail fraud charges that were brought by the United States Postal Inspection Service. And we were able to look at their immigration status since they're from France because ICE was involved. We have 2 fugitives in the case. One, Shannon Camille Smith. The other is Yassine Albouri, who is a French national who is out of the country and has never been brought to justice. Unfortunately, in the United States Attorney's Office, we are often presented with fraud cases such as this with skimming devices. Therefore, the public needs to be put on notice that when they use their credit cards or debit cards, they need to be aware of where they're using it and to keep track of their account information.
In this case, individual customers were the victims. They don't know what's going on, and they have to deal with going to the bank, proving to the bank that they weren't the ones that did this.
Everything stands still because then you start getting, your bills become due and you can't pay them because you have no access to your account.
Your accounts are available, so you can see to make sure that nobody's having fraudulent charges or taking advantage of your credit cards by looking at your statements online or calling your bank.
A new customer going into the bank should ask the bank agent or whatever they're called, should ask several questions before you put your money in the bank so that your money is secure and that if something does happen, how are they going to protect you?
You going to mug me?
Am I going to mug you?
Is that gorgeous or what, eh?
And I believe I can run a decent marathon.
Thank you very much.
Download Veely now.
Here once again with fraud prevention expert Craig Hannaford. Craig, these guys made this kind of identity theft look pretty easy. Is it as easy as it looked on that piece?
It is very easy. You know, the technology and the tools that criminals need to pull this off are readily available. That's why we have to be very, very careful with our credit cards. You shouldn't let your credit card out of your sight when you're in a restaurant.
The woman in our story was fairly diligent. She did whatever she had to do, and yet still she was defrauded. Could she have prevented this?
Well, it's pretty hard. I guess the best thing to do is make sure when you do get your credit card statements that you check the statements to make sure that all those charges are actually, real. And if they're not, you've got to call your credit card company right away. They'll investigate and they'll reverse those charges.
In most cases, they will reverse the charges, so it is a good reason to be diligent, not only while you're shopping, but while you're looking at your bill.
Don't let your credit card out of your sight when making a transaction. If you see a merchant swipe the credit card once in the credit card reader and again in some other device, report the incident to your credit card company immediately. Always check your credit card statement to ensure all the charges are legitimate. If they are incorrect, report this to your credit card company right away. Check your credit history regularly to make sure that there are no bogus entries. If you see any incorrect information on your credit file, correct it immediately. Make sure you shred any personal information before you put it out in the trash. Consider subscribing to a credit monitoring service that will warn you about any attempts to open bogus accounts in your name.
This story is a cautionary tale about how even quick-witted, intelligent people can be snagged into the web of a clever fraudster without even a hint of suspicion that it's happening to them. That is, until it's too late.
At that point, I just felt so stupid and that I'd been taken, and I couldn't believe that it would happen. When I was quite young, about 14, I watched somebody make an arrangement. I was fascinated. And I'm one of the lucky ones because I said to my mom, I said, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want to do. When you create something, you stand back and it's like, wow, I did that. That's very satisfying. It was January 2nd. We came into work and I found this email, and it was from Pastor Benjamin. He needed some gift baskets and some wreaths for his church anniversary. I emailed him back and I asked him to call me to make sure that what he wanted was correct.
This fraud basically was perpetrated from Ghana, Africa. There are no jurisdictions on the internet. It's worldwide, it's instant contact, and there are no borders.
Within minutes, he was on the phone.
Hi, Rosanna, how are you? Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna need 300 gift baskets and 300 wreaths.
Because it is a larger order, we do need payment up front, and that wasn't a problem. He sent the payment through with 4 different credit cards. It actually went through our POS and went into my bank account. So I physically had the money in my bank account. That's when we started ordering baskets and chocolates and wreaths. He actually paid for the shipping charges with credit cards. I, in turn, took that money and went to Western Union and shipped the money to his shipping manager. The first amount was $1,500. He called back the next day and he said, I forgot about the taxes. Can you ship over the taxes? Sure, no problem. He sent me the money. I went back to Western Union, shipped that over.
Just in Miss Yeoman's case, we would have seen those signs. And the first sign we would have seen after listening to her tell us about this opportunity, for these wreaths to be made, we would have said to her, okay, well, how are you sending this money? How are you getting paid? And once we would have heard the words money transfer, money wire, that would have been a red flag for any person in the BBB office to say, stop, wait a minute.
Since Rosanna thought she was using the so-called pastor's money, she also followed his instructions, no matter how unorthodox, to the letter.
He would pick up the money and he would call me as soon as he picked it up. Thank you very much, I've picked up the money. The next day, he ordered some more, so the shipping charges were more. The next amount was, I believe, around $2,300. The next amount was over $5,000. It was $5,600 or $5,700. Again, he paid me the same routine over and over. My bank manager called me and said, something's really fishy, it's not sitting right with me. I didn't believe him. I thought, no, he's being a great manager, he's just being cautious. I didn't feel that feeling until the next day when I found an email from a gentleman in Amsterdam from ING, which is the credit card company. Basically in the email had said, you've started receiving orders January 1st for large amounts, don't ship them, it's all fraudulent cards.
After the products were purchased and all of the shipping charges and taxes were paid, the total amount that Rosanna was responsible for when it was discovered that the credit cards were stolen, a whopping $44,000.
Randy Drum. What had happened was when Rosanna had realized that she had been victimized, she started to become concerned about any fallout that might come her way. She contacted her lawyer's office and a friend that worked in the lawyer's office. That person, through our past dealings, contacted me and said, can you take a look at this and see if we can help Rosanna out or see who perpetrated this fraud against her.
I asked him questions about his church only because I had interest in it, and he answered all my questions. Every question I had, he answered. There was a Christ the King Cathedral, but there was no Pastor Benjamin Wallace, who this gentleman said he was.
It was very upsetting. Rosanna's an honest person. She's a hardworking person. Within her business, I know that she was struggling, and to deliver that type of news to a good person who's been victimized like that is very difficult and very upsetting.
We called our insurance company. Our insurance company only covered 3,000 of it, and we're talking about 44,000.
Unfortunately, it happens all too often. Sometimes consumers are innocent, sometimes consumers are simply gullible, to the scams that are, put upon them by someone who's looking, to take advantage of them.
Officer Drum, he, took a report, so at least now I had a police number, so that when I went to my wholesalers and said, look, I've ordered, 300 baskets and 300 wreaths, this is what's happened, and I hopefully wouldn't get stuck for all that product. A lot of it was already shipped here, so it was already delivered, and a lot of it was food product, so that I was stuck with.
Because Rosanna never actually saw the credit cards and never witnessed the signature, she has no recourse. She's on the hook for all of the money lost.
The bank has closed our account, and they seized all the money that was in the account.
She counted on that money in order to run her business, to support her family, to pay her employees, who in turn were coming to work expecting to be paid. I remember being there on a payday, and Rosanna was extremely upset over the fact that she had to pay her staff, and the money wasn't there to do it. And she was trying her hardest to facilitate. So it's just not isolated to one person. It has a ripple effect in terms of other people and in terms of time.
I was a wreck for a couple of days, a lot of tears. I thought we were, at one point I even said, we're done, close the doors, we're done. And I had a little pity party, and then I came back and I thought, you know what, this isn't gonna get me down. We're not gonna close the doors. My family's gonna be fine, and we're just gonna fight our way back.
What signs indicate an investment deal is not legitimate? You find it through a spam email message? The offer is pressured, time sensitive. The investment is low risk with high return. It's such a hot tip, there's no time for documentation. Well, all of these are signs that the deal might not be legitimate. Fraudsters use high-pressure tactics to force you to make a quick decision with little or no information. When it comes to investing in anything, take the time to really understand the opportunity.
There are no jurisdictions on the internet.
He would pick up the money, and he would call me as soon as he picked it up. Thank you very much, I've picked up the money.
Consumers are simply gullible, to the scams that are, put upon them by someone who's looking, to take advantage of them.
It's just not isolated to one person. It has a ripple effect in terms of other people and in terms of time.
And then I came back and I thought, you know what, this isn't gonna get me down. We're not gonna close the doors. My family's gonna be fine, and we're just gonna fight our way back.
The local police knew that they simply could not get justice for Rosanna, so they advised her to take the story to the media.
As soon as she went public, my phone started ringing.
When the article was published, I emailed the article to a floral organization, and they posted it on their website. And I don't know how many emails they sent out, but I know how many phone calls I got.
And there was other victims that called that were almost victimized but weren't because of the fact that the story was carried. And one gentleman had contacted me, and he had gotten involved with the same people to the point where he had obtained money through stolen credit cards unwittingly, and the money was deposited in his bank account, and he was just about to wire it through to the individuals when he heard about Rosanna's story, and he immediately stopped the transaction at that point and was able to get the money back to the credit card companies.
I owe another $22,000, so it's still a hard pill to take, but that's where we're at now. A lot of tears, not wanting to get out of bed, but now I'm back, stronger than ever.
We're here with fraud prevention expert Craig Hannaford once again. Craig, is there anything that she could have done either before the transaction or during the transaction which would have helped her out in this situation?
Well, she was in a difficult situation, and particularly small business, they've got to be very, very careful when they're dealing with credit card transactions over the phone. The best advice I can give is you have to actually see the credit card. You have to verify the signature on the back, check to make sure that that card isn't stolen. Do everything that the credit card company says you have to do. And if you do those steps, you're likely covered from any fraudulent activity.
Oh man, though, with every pizza that gets ordered, every floral arrangement I've ever ordered, I've done it on the phone.
You see, it's hard because credit card companies, they may not know if a credit card number has been stolen, and that number is now being used by a fraudster.
So it's not only the consumer that needs to show due diligence. If you're a small businessman, be careful what you do with credit cards.
If you're a merchant, make sure you actually see the credit card being used. Fraudsters can easily steal credit card data and information and use this over the phone. Make sure you understand the rules and regulations of credit card transactions. Just because a transaction gets an initial approval from the credit card company does not always mean it is good. Only send money to people or businesses you know or trust. Use a payment system that provides extra layers of payment security, such as PayPal.
Now, we want to hear from you. So Fraud Squad takes it to the streets to hear some of your stories.
I know someone who used to sell fake stocks, and what they would do is they would go out into a construction zone and call a client and make it as if they were in like a mine to say like we're discovering the copper or the silver, and they put the phone, out into the air so that the client on the other end of the line could hear construction thinking that they were actually in a mine. But
my only experience with fraud is finding tickets on Craigslist for a sporting event. Transfer the money to the guy, $60 or $80, whatever it was, waited for him to email me the tickets for the game, and they never happened. So he just scammed me for $80.
I got a call once from Visa. I was actually quite impressed. They asked me if I'd been to Malaysia lately. And I said, well, not in about 20 years. And they called me up, and someone had compromised my card at a gas station. And no, here. And taken my credit card number, and then bought jewelry or something over in Kuala Lumpur.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of Fraud Squad. Remember, we're all fighting fraud together. For more information on this and other episodes of Fraud Squad, go to investigationdiscovery.ca.